So it's been a year since I started playing Honkai Star Rail, and I have noticed that the endgame of Honkai Star Rail is revolved a lot around two main mechanics. The first is to pair your character element to the enemy weakness type, and the second is to own the character that has a certain playstyle that fit what the endgame content promote. For example, the current Memory of Chaos that just released is very heavy on fire element, and the buff is very catered toward the break playstyle. So in this video, I want to create a chart where I can try to find which character is the best performer for each element and each playstyle. This kind of helps us identify our account weakness, like what playstyle am I missing or which element am I lacking in terms of character. And ultimately, it can help us decide which character we should save our pool for or which character should I build next. Okay, so in the top row, you can see that I added the 7 element, and in the first column, I added all the playstyle that currently available in the game. So we currently have Hyper Carry, Damage Over Time, Follow-up Attack, Break, and AoE. Now let's go over each one of them. First is Hyper Carry. My definition of a Hyper Carry is a character who are very selfish gameplay-wise, who want the entire team to build around them, give them buff or debuff to the enemy so they can deal more damage. For Hyper Carry, we currently don't have any character that fits this description at the moment beside Hook, but I don't want to add any character that underperform or need a lot of investment to match the power of other, so sorry Hook. Move on to Lightning Carry. The best character to fit in here is Acheron. Everyone is praising her to be one of the best character in the game. For me, Acheron can be a bit expensive. This mainly because her kit rely a lot around having Nihility teammate, especially Jiaocho, so her ultimate can function properly, while other DPS will prefer to have Harmony buffer unit. So if you have to build a Nihility debuffer, you mainly building them for Acheron. Also, if you want to use her with a Harmony unit, you will need to get her signature or her Eidolon, which will add to the cost. But if you do invest in her, she's definitely one of the better DPS. For the wind element, our best option is Blade. There's not much to say about him. People might say he a bit weak at the moment, but I think it's just the current situation with all the hypercarry beside Acheron, since the content haven't been favored to them for a long time. Blade has a unique HP manipulation mechanic, so maybe Hoyoverse will touch on it in the future and make him available again. For the ice element, we have Jingliu. She is in a similar situation with Blade. The only difference is that while Blade has competition, Jingliu is the only 5-star DPS that actually function, so that is a bonus for her. And she's also can work with Blade in a dual DPS team. For physical, we have Yunli. She's a new character that just released, and she's in a much better spot than the other two, mainly because she can play as a hyper carry and also a follow-up attack unit, which means she can cover more type of content. Also, the recent enemy release had benefit her counter attack playstyle a lot, especially all the warp enemy that have insane amount of speed and action. Also, her gameplay is really fun from what I heard. For imaginary, we have Dan Heng. He also kind of struggled the same as Blade and Jingliu, but he still had really good damage, and he has the unique SP consumption playstyle, which has its own place in the simulated universe and the divergent universe. For Quantum, the game is really lacking a good Quantum DPS at the moment. Our best option here is either Ginger or Zelly. I think both characters are similar in terms of power, and both of them need a bit more investment to be as good as other DPS. So you can pick one that you prefer here. I will go with Ginger. Okay, now for Fire Dot, we can choose either Jiaoqiu or Guinevere. They are similar in terms of damage, but I think it's better to go for Jiao here because then we will have a best in-slot support for Acheron. For Lightning, this spot definitely belongs to Kapka. She is the enabler and one of the core member of the Dot team, and she's a must-have if you are a Dot enjoyer. For Wind, I think Wind is the main damage element for Dot, and Black Swan currently has the highest damage output among all Dot characters, so this spot belongs to her. Now there is no dot effect for Ice, Imaginary, and Quantum, so I don't know if Hoyoverse gonna release any character related to dots for this element, so we have to leave them blank at the moment. Lastly, for Physical, the bleed effect you get when you break the enemy with Physical is very powerful, especially against bosses because the damage is dealt is based on maximum HP, and Luca can trigger this bleed damage preemptively with his enhanced basic attack, making him very powerful. His personal damage is pretty average, but he has really good single target toughness break, so it's easy to time his break on the enemy, and it's also enable him to become a super break DPS. Overall, I think he's a great character, especially as a 4-star, and I think people should use him more. Okay, now let's move to follow-up attack. For fire, we have Topaz. She can increase the damage enemy take from follow-up attack and had a lot of action via Numpy and has really good personal damage. She is also super SP positive and really easy to use, so she one of the high priority character for me. For Lightning, we have Moza. He's also an enabler and a sub DPS similar to Topaz. Also has really good damage and has a lot of debuff that increase follow-up attack damage on enemy. So he also a really good character for follow-up attack team. For Win, we have the newest follow-up attack DPS, Fei Xiao. She's the best follow-up attack DPS at the moment, and I think she is really cheap to build, cheaper than Acheron, because she works perfectly fine with some of the free support that the game give you. She also can ignore enemy weakness type in her ultimate similar to Acheron, and her single target damage is really high. We don't have any ice follow-up attack DPS. And for physical, I already mentioned Yunli. She is the best follow-up attacker for this element. For imaginary, we have Dr. Ratio. He is the original follow-up attack DPS before Fei Xiao. A lot of us got him for free. People might say he got power creep by Fei Xiao, but I think he's still working fine. He needs debuff on enemy to work, but both Topaz and Mose has debuff in their case, so they can synergy good with him. With him and Fei Xiao, now you can build two separate follow-up attack team. There's also no follow-up attack DPS for Quantum. Also, I want a special mention to Mark 7 Hun. She has really good synergy with other follow-up attack unit, and she can reduce any element toughness as long as you have it in the team, so it's also really worth to invest in her. Okay, now it's time for break. I think break and super break are some of the most broken mechanic in this game. I mean, the damage that the break character can do are just a dream for normal crit DPS, and the endgame content had been favored toward break for like 4 patches in a row now. But anyway, for fire, we have Firefly. Again, break is broken, but Firefly, she can bring it to a whole new level. Her kit give her a ton of break effect. She has self-action advance by 100% when using her ultimate. Then she also gains 60 speed, the biggest speed boot in the game. She also has increased weakness break efficiency, increased break damage, can ignore enemy weakness type, and she can apply fire weakness to enemy with her skill. She literally has everything that a break character wants, so if the enemy can be broken, Firefly can destroy it. I think she's just the best DPS in the game at the moment. We don't have any break character for lightning, wind, and ice. For physical, we have Bootil. He is much more balanced than Firefly. Compared to Firefly, he has several drawbacks. First is he is a single target damage dealer, And he also needs time to get his trick shot stack to ramp up his damage. His physical weakness application is also on his ultimate, making it harder to manage. Even with all this setback though, he still deal a lot of damage. You probably see clip where he one-shot bosses with a single hit. I also think this setback make him more fun to play because now player have to figure out different strategies to get the most out of his kid. I think a bonus point for Boothill for me is that his team doesn't need Harmony Trailblazer, so he doesn't have to compete with Firefly at this. So you can have Firefly and Harmony MC on one side and Boothill on the other side. For Imaginary, this spot belonged to Rappa in the future. Her kit is very similar to Firefly, but she doesn't have the same insane speed boot that Firefly has, and she also doesn't have elemental weakness application, so it will be much harder for her to break non-imaginary weak enemy. But it doesn't mean that she a weak character though. To be honest, I think all break characters are strong by default, but having a similar kit as Firefly and also needing Harmony Trailblazer to perform mean that she will have to compete directly with Firefly, so I understand why people might not want to pull for her. She will be better than Firefly at perfection, so that will be a bonus point for her. For Quantum, we have Sui. Her main selling point is that her kit scale both with crit and break effect, so she can have a hybrid build where she can deal both crit damage and super break. But this also means that her relic will be much more demanding. Shuiji can also ignore enemy weakness type, but it's tied to her talent follow-up attack at Eidolon 2 and her ultimate, which are single target damage and much harder to trigger. Overall, she's definitely not on the same level as other 5-star break DPS, but since Super Break is so broken, you can definitely make her work at a normal level if you have some of her Eidolon. Now let's go to AoE. AoE is a bit different from other playstyle because the way they are tied to perfection. While you can skip other playstyle if you don't like them, you will always need 1 to 2 erudition character in your roster to be ready for this game mode. For Fire, we have Himiko. She is the queen of perfection at the moment, and I suggest if you haven't picked the free 5-star from the 300 Boo selector, please pick Himiko. She can be built at a crit DPS or a super break DPS, depending on what the content require. And anytime there's fire weakness in perfection, you will see her right up on the tier list. For lightning, this is a tricky one because even though that we have a 5-star erudition character for this element, Jingron, a lot of people say Archeron actually outperform him in perfection. I don't own Jingron and I have been using Archeron with Kapka to clear any perfection with lightning weakness, so I will put Archeron in this spot. It will save me from pulling for another 5-star. You guys can decide if Jingron deserves this spot or not. For Ice, we have Herta. Similar to Himiko, she has been dominating perfection ever since this game mode had been released. Whenever there are ice-weakened enemy, she will take over, and the fact that she and her Eidolon are free make it even better. For physical, we have Agenti. Similar to Himiko and Herta, whenever perfection had physical weakness, he will also dominate this game mode. He's a bit harder to obtain though because he is a limited character. For Imaginary, I already mentioned Rappa. This is a spot she will perform the best in. And lastly, for Quantum, we have Jade. She is a bit different from other erudition characters that we just mentioned, in that she is a sub DPS and she needs to have another character in the team that has a lot of AoE attack. But since Herta is free, this shouldn't be as big of an issue. She can act as a main damage dealer when Perfection has a lot of quantum weakness, but she can also act as a sub DPS in other cases. Okay, we finally finished with all the DPS. Now let's go to sustain. My definition of a good sustain is character beside comfortably sustaining your team, they also has good synergy with the team playstyle. First, I want to start with Aventurine. He is currently the best sustain in the game. His best synergy is with follow-up attack team, and his shield is the strongest kind of sustain in the game. It's super valuable in harder content, like the higher level of Diversion Universe or the Simulated Universe. He is also currently the best in slot sustain for Archeron, since he had debuff in his ultimate, and he can use his signature Lycone or the 4-star trend of the Universal Market Lycone to apply more debuff. I will put him here in the follow-up attack spot, but do note that he can be played pretty much anywhere. I think Fushan has really good synergy with Hyper Carry, mainly because her skill gives all allies 12% crit rate, which is a very valuable stat for crit-based DPS. Also, maybe if there will be a HP manipulation meta, I think she will also shine. The best sustain for Dot team will be Ho-Ho. She can give the entire team energy and attack percent, which are all very valuable for Dot character. For follow-up attack team, it will be Aventurine and Lingsha. Both has a lot of follow-up attack in their kit, which benefit this playstyle. For break, it will be Lingsha and Gallagher. Both serve a similar role, mainly reduce fire weak enemy toughness bar, a debuff that can increase break damage taken on enemy and can deal a considerable amount of super break damage. For AoE, you want to use a sustain that has frequent AoE attack and also matching the sustain element with the enemy weakness type. So if there's a lot of fire weak enemy, you can use either Lingsha or Gallagher. If there is a lot of ice weak enemy, I find that Mark 7 Preservation is very helpful because her counter attack can thin out the enemy toughness bar, and her ultimate has really good AoE to break the wave of enemy. Also, enemy imperfection don't deal that much damage, so you don't have to worry about her weak sustain. If there's a lot of imaginary weak enemy, you can use Aventurine. That's it for sustain. Now let's move to buffer. Buffer are mainly Harmony character and is probably one of the most powerful class in this game. Two of the best buffer in this game are Ronmei and Robin. Ronmei can offer the entire team damage boost, speed, break effect, weakness break efficiency, resistant penetration, action delay, and a bit of break damage. Robin can offer damage boost, attack percent, action advance for the entire team, and additional damage on ally attack. Both of them can fit in pretty much any team comp. Ronmei can be the best in-slot buffer for dot, break, and AoE team, and of course she can also work with any follow-up attack or hyper carry team. Similarly, Robin can be the best in-slot buffer for follow-up attack, dot, and AoE team, and she can also work for hyper carry team. The hyper carry also have some specific support like Sparkle or Bronya. Both had damage and crit damage boost and can add action advance to the DPS. Sparkle can work with SP hungry unit like Denhung in Baibider Nune or Jingzhe, while Bronya can work with SP neutral DPS like Jingliu or Blade. Tingyun is also usually used in hyper carry team. She can give the DPS energy, attack percent, and damage boost. And lastly, a character that is a must-have for break team, Harmony MC. She's the only character in the game at the moment that can enable the entire team to do super break damage. And this is our last section, the buffer. You only need 2 characters for this, and you are mainly building them for Archeron. The priority character you should get is Zhao, and then you can either get Pela or Silver Wolf. I don't have Silver Wolf, so I'm gonna put Pela here. Okay, so we finally completed our chart. What you can do now is mark out all the character that you have built on your own account and then try to decide what you want to go for next, depending on what your account is missing. For example, for my account, which is around 1 year old, I have built Archeron, and Jingliu, who I don't use much, Imbibinator Nune Danhong, who carry me to the early game, Kapka and Black Swan are 2 of my favorite characters. Moza and Dr. Ratio are my main follow-up attack team. I also have Clara build as a substitute for Yoni at the moment. I also have Mark 7 Hunt build whenever I need her. Firefly is my only break character, and for AoE, I have built Himiko, Acheron, Herta, and Jade, so I don't really have to worry much about perfection. There's also Jinja, Luca, and Suiyi, who I own, but I have not finished building them. I'm actually building Luca at the moment. For sustain, I have Aventurine, Gallagher, and Fushan built. For buffer, I actually have all these character built, and Pela is my only debuffer. So let's look at it. For DPS, I'm currently lacking fire DPS, and I want both Jiaocho and Topaz. Topaz is for follow-up attack DPS, and Jiaocho is mainly for Acheron team. He can also join the dot team if it require. I'm pretty okay with lightning at the moment. For Wayne, I need another DPS, so I want to go for Fei Xiao here. With both Topaz and Fei Xiao, my follow-up attack team will be complete. I also need another DPS for physical, so going for Bootil here will give me another break DPS. I don't really have any option for ice. And I also don't need anything for imaginary, but I do plan to get Rappa because I like her. And for quantum, I will try to build both Jingja and Suiyi whenever I can. For sustain, I'm actually pretty okay with my lineup at the moment. Lingsha is a really powerful character because you can see she can cover 3 type of playstyle. But since I can use Aventurine, which is the best sustain in the game for follow-up attack, and Gallagher, which is free, is working fine for break. There's not really any incentive to pull for Lingsha, but if your account is new and you don't have Aventurine or haven't built Gallagher, Lingsha is an excellent option. I also want to get Ho-Ho someday for my dot team, but her priority is not that high. And all my buffer unit are built, and I'm getting Jiaocho for Acheron. Of course, my final plan for this game is to build all character in this dot, and also the one which might get added in the future. Also, with this chart, you can kind of predict what kind of character Hoyoverse might add into the game based on what is missing. Like, I really want them to add a fire hyper carry, and a ice follow-up attack character would also be nice. Quantum really need a new DPS, either a follow-up attacker or a hyper carry is fine. And I really don't want them to add more break character. I just think that this playstyle is a bit too broken at the moment, and they are power creeping all the enemy HP and make other crit DPS look really bad. And we're also missing a wind erudition character for AoE. And yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you can learn something from this, and if you have any thought on this shot, feel free to discuss them in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.